Hi everyone, thanks for clicking on my ugly mug again. I am going to be doing a review of Star Trek Into Darkness, which is probably, aside from the new Richard Linklater film, probably the movie that I was most looking forward to seeing this summer, the one that I felt would be of the best chance of being a really high quality picture. And I have to say I was very disappointed with it. There was a lot of stuff that I didn't like about this movie, and especially the ending. I'm going to get into more reasons why. Before I do, I wanted to mention a couple of guys, shout out a couple people, because they have Star Trek Into Darkness reviews up, and they're a couple of the very, very best critics that I see on YouTube here. They're very, very smart guys, very well spoken, and the reviews are very astute. First, there's Ben, whose channel is BMLR Productions. He guest appeared actually on the Movie Reviewers 100 a couple of years ago when he did an advanced review of the Spielberg animated Tintin movie. Really like his stuff a lot. He doesn't do current films frequently, but he did a review of Into Darkness, and the link to that is below. The next guy is Jim. His channel name is called Jim G Is Real. And he does a lot of current movies, actually. So he does a lot of the big current movies, as well as a lot of more out-of-the-way art house films. Very, very smart guy. I came across him on a collab channel called The Rough Cuts, and I've been a big fan of his since then. He did a review that has spoilers, but only in the second half. So you can watch the first half of his video and not worry about having the movie ruined for you. Ben's review is spoiler-free, so you can watch the whole thing. And both these guys had reservations about the movie, but overall it seems that they enjoyed it. Whereas I have many severe reservations about the movie. I'm going to get into why exactly. I'm also going to talk a little bit about some of their some of the things that they said, kind of as a response to both their videos, because I admire them so much. I'm outside because it's a very, very warm day in my apartment, but it's nice and cool out here. The sun is setting, and there are planes flying overhead, but hopefully that won't interfere with the sound too much. So I won't get into spoilers just yet, but I wanted to just say a few general things. First of all, this movie reminds me of Air Force One, which was a 1997 film that Harrison Ford was in. He played the President of the United States, and Gary Oldman was a Russian terrorist who hijacked the plane and demanded that his beloved leader, General Radek, be released from the Russian prison where he is being held and be put back into power. And of course the U.S. and the current Russian president don't want this to happen because he's a bloodthirsty dictator and lots of people suffered and died. So his intention basically is to hold the president's family hostage and demand that the president do as he says. What he doesn't realize is the president is actually still on the plane when he was supposed to have escaped, and the president, who has military training, ends up fighting off the terrorists and killing a bunch of them, and then trying to take the plane back and rescue the hostages. Now, the reason why it reminded me of Star Trek Into Darkness reminded me of this is because the movie just goes on way too long. There's a point where the movie could have ended where the whole hijacking threat was resolved, but there was a secret villain. There was a Secret Service agent who was actually working for the bad guys, and since he wasn't discovered at that point, he could have gotten away with it. But the filmmakers felt that they had to draw the action out further and create a situation whereby the traitor either had to reveal himself or be killed, and as it turns out, he revealed himself and then was killed. But the point is that there was a huge, extensive amount of action that just dragged the movie on for another 15 minutes at least. Unnecessarily so, I thought. I didn't really like the movie very much to begin with, but that just made it worse. And with Star Trek Into Darkness, the same kind of thing happens. There's a point where the movie could have ended. It would have been a really, really strong ending. But then the movie just keeps going on and on and on, and the ending that they come up with, the actual ending, is very, very anticlimactic compared with what happened. I'll get into the details in my own spoiler section a little bit, and describe exactly why that is. But there's one criticism. Another criticism I have: the action sequences are just too long. So long that I am sitting there in the theater, I'm really excited and nervous, and I'm hoping that the character gets out of the situation before it's too late. But then, after a while, I realized, hey, wait a minute, I'm watching a Star Trek movie, and the heroes aren't going to get killed because they're the heroes, and there's a whole series of these Star Trek movies yet to come. They're not going to kill these guys off right away. There's a scene where Kirk and several other Starfleet officers are being shot at while they're in a meeting. And there's a scene where Kirk is in a spacesuit and he's flying through open space from one ship to another, and his faceplate is cracked with debris, and it could burst open and all the air could get sucked out and he could die. And there's another scene in which the ship is in a lot of trouble. It could plummet through the atmosphere of a planet and burn up or crash and be destroyed. Everyone could be killed, and he's trying to get the engine fixed, which involves him climbing through a staircase and then climbing up some machinery and trying to get it working again. And you know, this would be exciting if it were shorter, if it was resolved more quickly. But the scene just goes on and on. And it's, again, one of those last-minute close calls, especially the scene where he's flying in the spacesuit. You know, the close calls in this movie, there's just so many of them. And after a while, they get a little tiring because I realize at a certain point, I'm sitting there and I realize nothing bad is going to happen here. You know, the characters are going to be saved in the nick of time just like always. And that sort of takes me out of the movie. One of the problems could have been that when I saw the movie, and I saw it basically on Thursday when it opened here, is that the theater I saw it in was a little bit smaller than I would have liked. The theater was pretty packed, full of people, but the theater was a little smaller than I like, and the screen was smaller for a big action spectacle like that. I saw it in 2D. I figured I would enjoy it more, but I think they were saving the largest screens in the multiplex for the 3D version because, you know, I just felt at a remove from the movie a lot of the times. I spent too much time thinking about my own reaction rather than really being emotionally involved in what was happening. So that was a big drawback for me. Ben was talking about in his video how oftentimes you'll have a quiet dialogue scene that suddenly bursts into action and then back to quiet dialogue and then back to action again very abruptly. And I can't say that I really noticed this as much as him. What I did notice is that there was at least 2 occasions, possibly 3, in which a quiet conversation was suddenly interrupted with violence. I'm not so sure about the transition, but it was something that I noticed, probably because I watched this video before seeing the film, and so I was aware of that. I was saying, oh, there's another conversation that got interrupted by a big crash or some bomb going off or something like that. Both Jim and Ben were talking about all the homages and references not only to the series but also to Star Trek II in particular. Jim is talking about how both this and the previous Abrams movie have Wrath of Khan envy, and this is true. Wrath of Khan is kind of a standard for these science fiction movies. Ben was actually talking about how the character of Khan from the Wrath of Khan, Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, was very similar to Nero. And how there's a reference, of course, to the Kobayashi Maru test in the first Star Trek movie, which isn't mentioned until Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. And then, of course, there are a lot of similarities in the new film as well. Just a lot of references. And Ben was actually talking about the style of the filmmaking and the look of the actors and saying, you know, they don't seem to have changed at all. It's like they started shooting the sequel immediately after the first one. You could take shots and images from one movie and put them in the other, and it wouldn't, you know, the look isn't any different at all. Ben really likes Abrams as an action director, and I'd say that his action scenes are well shot, but they go on for too long, and I would like to see them a little bit more succinct, because after a while I'm just thinking, okay, come on, let's get it over with already. This is just really going on a really long time. Jim was also talking about the references, saying they were getting a little bit silly, and I have to agree with that. I mean, it's one thing for the Star Trek movie that came out 4 years ago to have lots of references to the series, but at this point, 4 years later, everyone knows about the first Abrams Star Trek movie, the reboot with a new cast, and everyone is, you know, an admirer of that, and the people who like that movie are going to be really pumped for the new movie, and they don't need all these reminders about the old television series and the older films with the original cast. You know, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. It's sort of pointless. The movies are too self-aware, and again, it's sort of Wrath of Khan envy. That's what he called it. Jim talked about the principal actors and how we liked all of them, and I have to say that I think that they were all good, but some of them were really underutilized. Chekhov in particular, hardly see anything of Chekhov in this movie. The character of Scotty played by Simon Pegg. I really like Simon Pegg a lot. He's one of the most likable actors I see in movies these days. And he has some fun stuff to do, but he's not actually on the Enterprise for most of the movie. So Chekhov takes over in the engine room, and basically he's just running around trying to get the warp drive fixed and trying to make sure everything is working okay, and just talking with everybody in a communicator. He spends practically the entire movie in the engine room, and so you don't see hardly any of him at all. There's a little bit more of Sulu. He has some good moments, but really there isn't a whole lot to go on. And then you've got Uhura, the Zoe Saldana character. Of course, she's still in a relationship with Spock, and she still has her differences with Kirk. So the three of them kind of make a good trio there, but Uhura really doesn't seem to have a relationship with any other character except for Kirk and Spock. It's like, I don't even remember her talking with any of the other crew members in the principal cast except for the two of them. So maybe they'll fix that in the third one. By the way, the third one is actually something I'm already looking forward to, because it will probably end up being a different kind of film than the first two that have happened so far. In the first one, obviously, they're trying to stop Nero from causing destruction. In the new one, they're trying to stop the Benedict Cumberbatch character from causing destruction. So hopefully it will be a different sort of situation. Not that there won't be danger, but it will be a different type of story, so I'm already looking forward to that. And the possibility that Abrams won't be directing the next one. Someone else ought to probably do the third one, even though Abrams has had a lot of success so far. Jim was talking about how terrible it is that Kirk gets the Enterprise taken away from him, that he breaks a Starfleet rule and so he's demoted and he isn't captain of the Enterprise. And anyone who knows, Star Trek at all knows that, Kirk's eventually going to be made captain. In this movie it happens very, very quickly, and I sort of saw it coming as well. I'll get into that. So now I'm going to get into the spoiler section right here. And like I said, both Ben's and Jim's videos are linked in the description below, so please check them out if you haven't to. They've got really good channels, and don't watch any further if you haven't seen Star Trek Into Darkness yet, because I'm going to get into a bunch of spoilers right now. Okay, so the first thing I wanted to say about this new movie is that it is trying to serve two purposes. Number one, it's a sequel to the 2009 Star Trek movie, and the second thing is it's a remake of Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. And this, of course, is because Benedict Cumberbatch's character is Khan in this new series. They've rebooted the Star Trek series, and now they're trying to reboot or reimagine, or whatever you want to call it, Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, the film itself, which is a fool's errand, because that's like a real standard. It's the best Star Trek movie that's ever been made, and probably the best Star Trek movie that will ever be made at the rate they're going. It's a standard that, is just like impossible to meet. Now, I think Benedict Cumberbatch is an interesting guy. I think it was Ben who said that that this guy actually does look like he's a genetically engineered person, because he is kind of strange looking. He's got a really, really deep, ominous voice, which is cool. But what I liked even more about this movie is the surprise villain, and that, of course, is the general who sends Kirk on his mission to capture and kill Khan in the first place, and that's Peter Weller. Peter Weller, of course, was in RoboCop, and he was in Buckaroo Banzai, and he had a good villain role in one of the 24 seasons. I really like him a lot. So when he shows up with a bigger, badder version of the Enterprise and threatens to, blow everyone in the Enterprise away, I'm just like, whoa, this is crazy. Trains the guns on him. I'm thinking, how are they going to get out of that now? But of course, I'd forgotten about what Scotty was up to, and lo and behold, he manages to shut the enemy ship down just in the nick of time, which was cool. That was a fun situation, and I really like the scenes between Kirk and this general guy who they thought was on their side. I thought that he wouldn't show up again until the end of the movie, but it turns out he's one of the big bad guys, so that was really cool. Speaking of Kirk, I have to say that I like Chris Pine a lot more in this movie. When Khan first attacks the meeting of captains and first officers, I was thinking about how, since Kirk's now a first officer, he's going to have to get back up to captain some way, and lo and behold, there's somebody attacking them, so I figured that Pike was going to get killed, and he was. And so now that Pike's going to get killed, Kirk's going to be the captain, he's going to get Spock to be his first officer again, so everything's going to go back to normal. But for the rest of the movie, Kirk is just hopping mad. He can barely control his rage at Khan over the fact that he's, killed Pike, who he has a lot of affection for. So that was really good. Chris Pine's performance is really good in this movie, and I like most of the other guys, but he sort of stands out in this one, which was good. Can I just say that Khan, for a really intelligent guy, has some very, very stupid henchmen? That guy who's talking with Simon Pegg, who's talking with Scotty in the cargo hold on the enemy ship, is just like, just an idiot, you know, he's just an idiot. Here's the walkie squawking at him, giving him instructions, and he doesn't know what's going on. Why have you got your hand behind your back? What's up there? He could just look and see. The guy's got a weapon, you know, he could easily overpower him, but he gives Scotty plenty of time to get the upper hand on him, which was terrible. So anyway, now I wanted to talk a little bit more about the ending. And of course, the key scene here, of course, is the replica of the scene from Wrath of Khan, where instead of Spock fixing the Enterprise but getting radiation poisoning and then dying, you've got Kirk doing the exact same thing. And I thought to myself, wow, they're really doing it. This is a really ballsy move of them killing off Kirk, because it's not like Kirk isn't a Vulcan. He can't get his mind transferred like in the original and then be born again. But instead, you've got, you know, and they already blew up Khan's ship. You know, they transported their torpedoes over there and blew the thing up. Khan should be dead right now because he was out in space. But of course, Khan survives that, and his ship crashes down to Earth and plows through a bunch of buildings and kills however many innocent people. But he's just fine. He jumps out and runs out. And now that Spock knows that Khan is still alive, then he transports out to the surface, runs after him. There's this big long foot chase. You know, he catches up to him. They start beating each other up and kicking and punching and all that kind of stuff. And then Uhura shows up and zaps Khan a few times, and finally they subdue him. Meanwhile, McCoy is experimenting with Khan's blood, and the Tribble comes back to life. So he's like, "Ooh, I've got an idea." And I'm like, "Yeah, I know what's going to happen now. They're going to use Khan's blood to revive Kirk, and Kirk's going to be okay." And I was thinking, how cool would it have been? How ballsy would it have been to actually let Kirk die? And for the rest of this rebooted series, Spock's the captain of the Enterprise. You've got Uhura, you've got the other gang. Alice Eve is Carol Marcus. She could join the cast, but you know, they don't have to have the exact same thing happen in the original series. You know, it's not like Kirk has to, you know, eventually get together with Carol so she can give birth to David eventually, who showed up in Wrath of Khan and Search for Spock. They don't have to do that, but of course they couldn't do that. They couldn't go there. Christopher Nolan can't kill off Batman in the last Batman movie, then these guys are definitely not going to kill off Kirk, so that was disappointing. And again, that just went on way too long, and I was just sitting there thinking, oh, how long is this going to be? You know, once the fighting is over, then you see Kirk gets revived, and then there's a big speech, and then they get on the Enterprise, and they're going to take off again, and everything is back to normal, and I thought, man, you know, if only they'd had a little bit more balls, I don't know. One thing that I would have done to improve the ending that's already here is that at one point, Spock tries the Vulcan nerve pinch on Khan, and it almost works. It subdues him, but doesn't quite subdue him. And I just thought it would have been really cool if, after trading a bunch of blows, and Khan gets Spock on the ropes, Spock can just reach out and touch his shoulder, and then he goes, ah, and slowly loses strength and collapses and subdue him that way. That would have been just like a big crowd-pleasing moment. Kind of like when Superman and Superman 2 came out of the booth and then just picked up the Kryptonian bad guys and tossed them aside, you know, because they didn't realize they'd lost their powers. Anyway, add all this up, it's a very disappointing experience for me. I don't like it nearly as much as the previous Abrams Star Trek movie, so I can't recommend it. And I know a lot of people really like this movie, they think it's a lot of fun, and there's some fun stuff in it, but overall I'd have to say I expected better. And I really think it was a bad idea for them to try and remake Wrath of Khan, because, I mean, seriously, it just, you can't compare. Actually, one of the guys, I think it was Ben, said that watching that scene between Kirk and Spock separated by the glass was like watching a Saturday Night Live sketch version of the scene. It just was really embarrassing. And he talked about the one line that he really wished wasn't in the movie, and I wrote him back, and I'm like saying, I hope the line isn't the one I'm thinking of. And I watched the movie, and I was waiting for it. I'm like, please don't say Khan, please don't say Khan. And Spock goes, Khan! I'm just like, thanks a lot. So, anyway, please check out the other guys' videos. Thank you very much for watching. Appreciate it. I'll see you again real soon. Bye.